I just wanted to welcome everyone to the panel, dealing with Jolene, a conversation about mental health representation. My name is Maggie, and I'm a physician. My pronouns are she, her, and we're just going to go down the line and actually introduce ourselves.
My name is Jules, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Heather. My pronouns are she, her.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bonnie, and my pronouns are she and her.
And apparently nobody else added their profession but me. Nice.
I was going to start asking about that.
No one else read the Google sheet. All right. I just wore this shirt for you guys too, by the way. Can you read it? No. It says, "Trust me, I'm a doctor." But before we do begin this panel, I just wanted to take a few moments to say a few things. The purpose of this panel is to create a safe and inclusive environment where we can talk about mental health representation and the impact of Jolene. And although we will not be showing any video clips, we will be playing audio clips. And this may evoke powerful feelings in the audience. So if you're uncomfortable with discussing these topics, then this may not be the right panel for you at this time. Also, Bonnie stole my thunder. But to encourage participation, we are not live streaming, but we are recording, and we may decide to release this at a later date, either edited or unedited. I also wanted to take a moment to say that asking questions takes courage. So if any of you guys are willing to ask questions at the end of the panel and be brave, we do have some great Wine on Herb swag, and I wanted to show one thing off. So Dom PC unfortunately could not be here with us, but she did sign this for us. So she just wanted to tell you all that you are all very brave. So I thought that was pretty awesome. But if you are uncomfortable with asking a question on the mic, Jill and a group of volunteers, Jill, my wife, in the purple shirt over there, and a group of volunteers will be walking around with a bunch of note cards and some pens, so feel free to, there's someone in the back too, so feel free to ask a question. Yes?
Did you get the list of questions that were submitted?
We do also have a list of questions from Twitter. We did go through them and selected a few. We will probably ask a few questions at the end as people are queuing up. Hopefully as people are queuing up. Because I do have a lot of Wine and Herb swag I don't want to take home. I just wanted to let you guys know. All right? And also, the last thing I wanted to say is, if at this moment you are contemplating suicide, this is not okay. Please understand that you matter. You matter to us. You matter to your family. You matter to your friends. Please reach out to someone, a mental health provider, a family member, a mental health hotline. It's okay to ask for help. And now I'd like to start the panel. And I'd like to start the panel with Bonnie leading us through a calming exercise.
Hi, everyone. So for those who don't know, I work full-time as a clinical counselor. So to start off this panel, we're actually going to be doing a progressive muscle relaxation exercise. So some of you may have done this before, some may not. That's totally okay. We're going to start from the top. So first, start off, I want to invite everyone to just sit comfortably, if that means laying down on the row of chairs.
Does that mean I get off the panel? Because that's the only way I'm going to be comfortable.
Yeah, so I'm going to be guiding you through this, and you can decide to do this with your eyes closed or with your eyes open, or you can look at a spot on the ground or a wall anywhere to begin with, right? And as we're doing this exercise, you may notice your thoughts wandering off because you notice things in the background, like, oh, this room is really warm, or oh, the door just opened, or oh, it just closed. Right? So as these thoughts come through your mind, I want to invite you to just notice them and just notice them, and then bring your thought back to what we're doing in the present moment. Because as we're going through this, there may be other thoughts that come through, right? I'm really hungry right now. Why did I come to this panel and not lunch, right? Or this is really weird, right? All sorts of thoughts. Just, again, inviting you to bring your thoughts back to what we're doing in this present moment. So what's going to happen is I'm going to lead you through some breathing exercises, and we're going to move from top to bottom. We're going to progressively tense and relax certain parts of our body, right? So to start, I'm going to invite everyone to remember to breathe as we're doing this. Pretty important. You know, just noticing your breath as you're inhaling and exhaling. Some people find that it helps to breathe through your nose, and then slowly exhale through your mouth. And as you inhale, just notice that breath entering your body And as you exhale, notice as it slowly leaves your body. So as we're continuing to breathe, I'm going to invite you to tense your foreheads and frown intensely for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Wiggle your foreheads or your eyebrows around a little. Just kind of notice how that sensation is like on your forehead, how it feels a lot lighter right now, how perhaps it's not as tense when we were intentionally tensing. Continue taking some nice deep breaths, just inhaling and exhaling. Next, we're going to move to our jaw. We're going to tense our jaws tightly for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Kind of open your jaw, move your mouth around. Again, noticing that difference in sensation to when we were intentionally tensing and we were relaxed. I want us to take a deep breath in, and as we exhale, let out a huge sigh. One more time, inhaling and sighing as we exhale. Okay, next, we're going to move to our shoulders. I want us to bring our shoulders up to our ears, up high, tight for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Maybe roll your shoulders around, forward, backwards. Kind of notice if there's any tension there. I know we've been conning for a day and a half. It gets pretty busy. Some of us maybe haven't been getting as much sleep as we'd like. Again, just kind of notice that tension. And as you're taking these deep breaths in, inhaling and exhaling, I want you to just imagine yourself breathing in relaxation with every breath in. And as you release your breath, imagine yourself letting go of any tension in your body. Next, we're going to move to our forearms. We're going to raise our forearms up and tense for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Shake off your forearms a little. We never really notice our forearms. Like, that's never really anything we pay attention to. So it's always interesting to notice the blood flow kind of slowly coming back to your body, right? Next, we're going to focus on our hands and fingers. We're going to tense and tighten our hands into a fist for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, as you're doing this, just notice the blood flow returning to your hands. Notice that warmth in your fingertips. Maybe you tense a little too tensely. That's okay, right? Just continue taking some nice deep breaths, ignoring, the thought that came to mind when that sound came on. To just kind of bring yourself back, right? Again, taking some nice deep breaths, inhaling and exhaling. Next, we're going to move to our stomach. We're going to tense our stomach, our diaphragm, our core tightly for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, taking a nice deep breath in and slowly letting it out. As you continue taking those nice deep breaths, I want you to notice your breath going through your mouth, down to your lungs, and all the way down to your stomach and diaphragm. And as you exhale, again, just imagining any tension in your body releasing. Focusing on this present moment. If your thoughts are wandering off because, the door opened, that is totally fine. Just bring it right back to what we're doing right now. Just continue taking some nice deep breaths, inhaling and exhaling. Next, we're going to focus on our hips and our buttocks. So we're going to tense our buttocks for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Kind of wiggle our bums around, maybe turn from side to side because we notice that there's a lot of tension in our lower back. especially when you've been seated for prolonged periods of time, or if you've been standing, like at an autographs line or a photo ops line. It gets pretty tiring, right? There's a lot of tension. Just kind of notice if there's any there. And again, as you're inhaling, I want you to imagine yourself breathing in relaxation. And then slowly breathing out any tension in your body. Next, we're going to bring our attention to our knees. I want us to bring our knees together and tense our knees tightly for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Maybe shake our legs out a little bit. Again, this is another part of our body that we really never pay attention to, right? We're always go, 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 right? So focusing our knees and just focusing on this present moment. Taking some nice deep breaths in, inhaling and exhaling. Lastly, we're going to bring our attention to our toes and our feet. We're going to tense our toes and our feet tightly in our shoes for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Kind of wiggle our toes, maybe roll our ankles around nice and slow. Again, this is another part of our body we really don't pay a lot of attention to, right? And after being on our feet all day, or yesterday and today, maybe with travel time, right? We're tired. And again, just as you're inhaling, imagining yourself breathing in that relaxation. And then exhaling, letting out any tension in your body. And if it helps as you're inhaling, just imagining that air starting from top to bottom. And as you exhale, let out a deep sigh. So as we're continuing to take these nice deep breaths, just do a quick scan of what's going on in your body right now. Start from our foreheads, going down to our jaws, to our shoulders, our arms, and our hands. Notice if there's any parts of us that may be achy or tense. And again, just take some nice deep breaths. Inhaling and exhaling. And again, imagining any of that tension just leaving our body. Continuing downwards to our stomach, our hips, our knees, and our feet. Again, just breathing in slowly. Breathing in that nice deep breath. And as you exhale, let out any tension in your body. So just continue taking some nice deep breaths. Just inhaling and exhaling. Notice any tension in your body. And as you breathe, imagine yourself just releasing any of that tension. Take a few more deep breaths. And when you're feeling comfortable, I want to invite you to open your eyes again and come back to the room, but there's no rush. You can take your time.
Thank you, Bonnie, for running us through that calming technique. Anyone else here much more calm? I mean, I'm still on stage, but still. All right, so I'm going to do a little double duty. I'm going to be moderator and panelist. We're going to open up with about 4 questions that we're going to answer. I'm going to ask and answer the first question, and then all of us are going to answer each question down the line. Then what we're going to be doing is playing some audio clips, and then it'll be time for questions after that, after we discuss the audio clips. If during the audio clips you'd like to ask a question, feel free to interrupt us. Like I said, formally informal, and I do apologize, I have a cough, so sorry about that. So first question is, why is mental health so important to us in general, and why does it matter to us personally, and I guess I'm going to answer that from a twofold perspective. As a physician, one of the things that I'm taught is that all things in the DSM, which is kind of our Bible of mental health, it's all about spectrum. They're all pieces of us, and it's when it affects us from and interferes with our daily life. That's when we call it a mental illness, right? So from my perspective, when we stigmatize something like that, it's really unfortunate and unfair because it really is all a part of us. I can tell you if I've had depressed mood, I've had all those things. And I think we all struggle with these things, and to stigmatize it is unfortunate from a mental health perspective and from a physician's perspective. From a personal perspective, why it's important to me is I suffer from crippling performance anxiety, as I say this sitting on a stage. And it's taken years, months of cognitive behavioral therapy to get up here, and has affected my professional life significantly. And I think that it's good to be very honest and open about these things. So. Jules.
So I have dealt with depression all my life. I can't actually think of a time when I wasn't depressed. So for me, it's really important to bring issues to light because when I was growing up, I didn't know that feeling this way was not normal. I didn't realize that having harmful and suicidal thoughts was not good. And just I've had so many experiences that I really want to be able to share with people. And it wasn't until about 2014 I was watching an episode of Law and Order SVU. I was sitting on my couch and I realized that I'm a domestic abuse victim. And I've been dealing with that ever since. And I have had a lot of mental breakdowns recently, a lot of major depression periods. And I also recently found out that I was bipolar, which really brings into light a lot of the stuff that I have been through, certainly with losing friends and people not understanding mental health issues. So it's really important for me to be able to share my experiences and hope that somehow it helps someone else.
I have suffered from several mental health issues for as long as I can remember since I was a kid. I'm diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's been a huge part of my life, controlled a part of my life, at least as a teenager. Because of the background I grew up in, I've always grown up in areas where it was stigmatized and it was seen as not a real illness or not a real issue, or you're not trying hard enough to be happy. And then I joined the Marine Corps, and it was even worse. It's anything like that is seen as complete weakness, and it's still very it's an area where it's very stigmatized because it's such a macho subset of society, and they basically made us think that we would lose our jobs if we sought mental health treatment. But I eventually, with the help of encouragement of a lot of friends, I did finally, only in 2013, finally start going to therapy, and just getting a diagnosis and validating that the reason I felt this way is because I did have an illness, and it was something that was just as real as my back injuries and that kind of stuff. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity to go and see a therapist or get diagnosed and get on meds because of the stigma around it. So ever since then, because I went through that, I've kind of made it a point I talk about my issues as much as I can. And that's why I'm very grateful to be on this panel, to be able to kind of spread that we shouldn't stigmatize it. We should be able to talk about it, because the difference between going it alone and actually getting the kind of help that you need can save your life. Absolutely. So it's something I'm very passionate about, and something I've dealt with. So
So last time I had to answer this question was for a job interview. So this is significantly less stressful. Thank you. So mental health is important to me because growing up in a Asian culture, it wasn't something that was normalized or even talked about. When it came to mental health in the Asian culture, the idea was that you hide it and you don't talk about it and it doesn't exist. And after immigrating to Canada with my family, growing up, seeing a lot of different things in school, at work, on television, I realized like, oh, hey, there's this thing that I had never even really realized. And as I continued my education, I realized that I wanted to go into mental health as a specialty. And for many different reasons, one of which because I was personally impacted as well growing up, experienced a lot of bullying, and then sought out counseling, saw a counselor throughout elementary and high school, and I realized how much support I gained through that, right? Even going to university and grad school, hearing about how it's okay for us to see a therapist and being around other therapists who normalize the idea that, hey, this is something just as important as when I break my leg, I go see a doctor, made me realize that this is something that needs to be discussed more. When it comes to mental health, just like, I almost called you Jill for a moment there, just like Maggie was saying, yes,
We look
yes. Yeah, so just like Maggie was saying, the DSM, it's all on a spectrum, right? And a lot of times they don't just pop out of nowhere. It's typically because they are a response to something that has happened, right? So realizing that a lot of times it's a number of different variables and factors that contribute to why a person is the way that they are, and having to address, okay, maybe it's the root that we want to talk about as opposed to just changing the behavior, because a lot of times the behavior might actually be how the person copes, right? And so I think I answered the question.
I think you did too.
Okay.
So the next question is kind of a two-parter, and we don't all have to answer, but why do you guys think that having mental health representation on screen is so important, and is all representation good representation? And I ask you guys the same thing to think about.
So I don't think all representation is a good representation, but I think it's really important to shed light on a lot of mental illnesses. I think it's, I think when we think of mental illness, a lot comes to mind with just depression. There's certainly many conditions, and I think that it's really important to represent all of them. And I am struggling to find TV shows, movies that have stuff that I feel represents me. PTSD, bipolar, certainly depression. Depression often has a lot of common stereotypes and isn't really portrayed accurately, which we'll get in sooner, the rest of the panel. But yeah.
Obviously, I think that having accurate mental health representation is important, and certainly not all of the mental health representation we see is positive. It's all kind of lumped under a negative stereotype of crazy, and that's it. Like, if there's any kind of mental illness shown in a lot of cinema or in a lot of media, it's just the crazy person, who is usually a violent person or something like that. And that is what enforces these negative stereotypes and adds to the stigma of, and causes people not to get the help they need. Very, 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 just like everything else, very, very slowly, we're moving in the right direction. When I think of good mental health representation, the only thing that really comes to my mind, I don't know if how many of y'all watch One Day at a Time? Yeah. That's by far the best representation I've seen of mental illness. They have Penelope as one of the main characters. She's a veteran. They talk very frankly about she has depression and anxiety, but that doesn't define her. And she still manages to be a good at her job, a good parent, and it shows her being a good parent and being a good member of society and still taking her meds and going to therapy. So we definitely need to see more things like that, where it's a person living their life that happens to have mental illness, where they're not just a token crazy character. So hopefully we can continue to see that representation grow.
Similar to our other panelists on here today, I also believe that having good representation in media is important a lot of times because it models to people what they think is the norm, quote unquote, right? And Hollywood a lot of times kind of casts this lens, similar to what Heather was saying, of crazy, right? They really don't accurately portray it, or if they do portray it, it's very specific pieces of it, right? And even thinking back to how media has progressed, right? Think about PTSD. It used to be referred to as shell shock. Did any of you know that? Right? And so like years ago, after World Wars, they had no idea. They just like, oh yeah, that's just how it is, right? But as time has progressed, as movies have been made even, right? It's provided this platform and this opportunity for people to have conversations about it. And as more shows are coming out and normalizing mental health, it makes life a lot easier for people to be able to have conversations about it.
I'm just going to echo, obviously, what everybody says, so I'm not going to say too much, but I will say that question on is all representation good? Representation is a bit of a double-edged sword, because all representation is better than no representation, and that's a step we have to take, and it's frustrating, but it's something we need to know. You know, back in the day, it was hysterical, which comes from the uterus, right? Because women are crazy. And that's unfortunately, that's what it was. But now things have changed, and I think you have to keep pushing the envelope. And we encourage you all to do that. You do that with the power of your viewership. So keep doing it. Next question: what would you consider? And this is also for you guys. What would you consider enough representation and ideal representation?
There you go.
As far as ideal representation, I already kind of touched on that when I talked about Penelope on One Day at a Time. Having somebody who accurately shows them living their life, just so happening to have mental illness. As far as enough, just like representation in any other subset of society, I think it should reflect society. Just like I think that as far as the amount of queer characters on television should reflect the amount of queer characters in society. The amount of characters dealing with mental health issues should reflect the amount of people dealing with mental health issues.
I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that. I mean, it's who we are, and that's the way it should be portrayed. So briefly, the last question I have is, how has mental health representation evolved over the years? And I think, Bonnie, you touched on that a little bit, so maybe you can start. And then how does Wine and Earp push the envelope, especially with the Jolene episode?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, movies, for one, as they go back to portray historical events that have occurred, have been able to shed light on things that we perhaps didn't realize at the time, right? PTSD is one of the major things that have come up. Other things that have come up in recent years, even the topic of anxiety and depression, right? Some of you may be familiar with the Let's Talk Day, or what are some other things in media? What are some other things in media that come to mind when you think about
Evolution?
Evolution? Yeah.
Well, in terms of evolution, from my perspective, what I look at is schizophrenia, the way it's been portrayed in the past. The way it's portrayed now, especially, and if you look at the Law and Orders, it's always someone off meds. It's always someone who, has done something bad. The nice thing recently is that they've actually sort of championed that a little bit, and it usually ends up being someone else, which is great, instead of always scapegoating. And I think that's the most important thing that I've seen in the evolution of media, is that we're not scapegoated, right? We're not scapegoating mental health all the time, because that's what we used to do, And if you think of the classic portrayal of the Joker, right? Probably one of the best characters ever. But at the same time, if you break it down, kind of disturbing in the way that you perceive mental health, right? Because it's this person who we perceive as crazy, right? Crazy Joker. and yet they've done all these things that are not nice or kind. So for me, even though I love that character, I'm completely conflicted because I don't like the way it's portrayed. And I'm hoping that over time, because as we know with comics, there's always evolution. There are like 600 films that are going to come out. Over time, that will become a bit more nuanced and less scapegoated.
Yeah, and leading back to Maggie had mentioned the Jolene episode, right? I know that episode resonated for a lot of us. And from a professional standpoint, when I watched it, I absolutely loved it. It is hands down my most favorite episode ever out of any show I've seen before. And the reason why is because they portray it and externalize it, and they symbolize it in such a way that makes it visible and real. Because a lot of times when it comes to mental health, there is that struggle of, I don't see what's happening, right? When we break a leg, we can see it. We know, like, oh, hey, you shouldn't keep running. We should probably call an ambulance, right? But when someone is experiencing something like depression or anxiety, right, we don't necessarily see it because it's not always externalized. It's often internalized, and we have these racing thoughts that go through our mind, right? And so the fact that the episode even portrayed what some of us experience in our heads right on screen was just incredible to see. Because for those who are on Twitter, quite often people are like, my Jolene's really bothering me today, right? The fact that we're able to externalize it, that's such a powerful thing. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to add?
Yeah, I'm just adding on just a little bit from what she said, because I have a lot of the same thoughts as far as that goes. I think it really, and I don't know how intentional this was, but the fact that they did give us something to not have to use the words. We had this actual, like, kind of an inside euphemism almost for what we're going through. And I think it really empowered people to talk about how they're really feeling, because they didn't have to say, you know, I'm dealing with suicidal thoughts, or I'm dealing with severe depression right now. They just say, man, Jolene's getting to me, and we all know what that means. We know that means that person needs support. And I also really like the idea of, we hear the euphemism a lot, like, oh, we're all fighting our demons. We're all fighting our demons. And then to see that in the show as a literal demon, it's something really cool that you can only really do in a genre show. But I think it really it made me feel a little bit validated to see, like, depression is an actual physical thing that you're fighting. So I really liked that, and it's not something I've seen in any other show or movie before.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Heather. It definitely normalizes stuff that is shown within the episode, and certainly it really, really highlights having insecurities. It is, I mean, I can't really think of another show that highlights showcasing people's insecurities, like Nicole being left out, Waverly not feeling like she's enough. And that's a lot of what a lot of people feel. And it's very hard to be vulnerable about that. And I think that Jolene really highlighted that well.
So what we're going to do next is play a couple clips. We have about 5 chosen out, but I don't know how many we'll get, because we definitely want to take some questions from the audience. Remember, I have to give away all this swag. So with the clips, what we'll do is play the audio clip, and then the 4 of us are actually going to just discuss. We're going to just talk about the things that we liked and didn't like, and what it really showed for us. So if we can play clip 1, that'd be great. They actually originally asked me to read the transcript. That was not successful. I just wanted to let everyone know. I'm happy to do it while we're waiting for the clip to queue up.
We did it during our phone call rehearsals.
That really was not pleasant. It turns out I actually can't yell, which is really weird. I'm trying to give them time. But anyone have a question in the meantime? Yes. I've got one over there. Can we get a mic over there? Anyone? Or you can just scream. Okay, cool. Say that again? What are your thoughts on, the question is, what are your thoughts on discussing your mental health at work? So I'm going to take this one first, just because my work is kind of interesting. I'm guessing that's directed at me. And I'd like you to come up and grab this, since you were the first question to ask. Can you guys hear me? So I think in my job, I would say that mental health is even more stigmatized in some jobs, barring maybe Heather's. It is also kind of a tough, take it through sort of job. You move through things. There's empathy, there's compassion for others. But, you got to get stuff done. So I'm very frank about my performance anxiety. And I have actually a little social anxiety and social phobia as well. I'm a little less frank about that. All this is going to be on YouTube, so I guess everybody's going to know. That's fine. And I did mention that earlier on, it did interfere with my professional growth. And that is because I'm expected to do certain things. I have a relatively large position that's both medical as well as administrative. And because of my performance anxiety, it doesn't allow me to move forward. And my boss is very well aware of that. And has been oddly supportive, and really has tried to help move things forward. I think it's something I'm very okay discussing. I actually had a colleague who committed suicide a while back. And sorry, I'm going to tear up over this. It was a very good friend of mine. But we hide it very well, especially in my career. So I want to be honest. So I am.
So I am a nutritional therapy practitioner, but full-time I work as a line cook. It's very exhausting. I am actually very burned out from it. I had an anxiety attack conveniently in front of my boss about a couple years ago. And luckily my roommate, who's also a coworker, was there and helped me with that. But that was the first time that ever happened, and it was a very, very vulnerable period that I
Currently, we're all going to cry, so it's good if anyone wants some Kleenex.
That I cried in front of everyone in the restaurant. Thank you. So for me, I have internalized a lot of my issues. I barely talk about myself at work. I just don't talk about my personal life. I just keep it separate. And for me recently, having been diagnosed with major depressive disorder and bipolar too, I had to disclose that to my boss and my manager because I, at one point, was not fit to work. There were actually many times I ended up calling out of work. So they were incredibly supportive, but I had extreme anxiety about going up to them and explaining that to them. And I think I'm happy to have the environment that I have because they are very supportive. On the other hand, it's difficult to come forward with something that is always stigmatized, and a lot of people certainly don't know. And within the restaurant industry, it's just go, go, go. You hardly get any breaks, and people run themselves into the ground with drug addiction and alcoholism. So it's a hard industry, and being able to now fully disclose that to my managers and my boss was extremely helpful for me.
Because we're running out of time, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut off just a little bit and see if we can actually get those clips played, or a clip played. Is that okay, guys? So what do you guys think? No one wants to talk now.
Nobody wants to interrupt the other ones. One of the reasons
totally
we
not.
chose that is because it really illustrates how the kind of filter of mental health issues can distort how you see yourself. It was making Waverly feel like everything going wrong was her fault, to the point where in the episode, to the point where she thought she was a literal demon. But it's relatable, I think, to a lot of us that deal with mental health issues, and that we take things all on ourselves to the point where we think that we're worthless, or that we're causing trouble, or that we're a burden on people. I maybe not thinking we're literal demons, I hope, but and just kind of having Doc under his little spell, kind of playing the devil's advocate, the depression's advocate, and reinforcing those negative thoughts she was having about herself. And so, again, they're using Jolene as kind of an allegory of how depression distorts how you view yourself, and how it can play on your most harmful thoughts about yourself.
I really like the use of the word demon. Am I a demon? Or am I a demon? The reason, because it's kind of, it actually has two meanings. It's that same filter, and we actually use that term in medicine about depression and the depression filter, but also because what it shows is sometimes when you're in that moment, you feel like you're nothing more than that, right? And so I think that really encapsulated that for me in that scene, was like, there's nothing left of me. I am only this. So I thought that was a really important line in the scene. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to add. That's it? Okay, let's play clip 2 then. Kind of an intense scene. I'm happy to take this one first. So I think this is probably one of my favorites. I love this one. There are a couple of things that are good and bad about it. I don't know if you guys noticed, but after she says, I'm here, and I stay, and I'm never, I love them back, and I'm never going to give up on them, she never says she's not going to give up on herself, right? And so for me, that was a really missed opportunity, because a lot of this is about us making sure we understand that we're worth it, that we're worth fighting for. It's not about fighting for someone else, although that helps, but we are worth it, right? So for me, it was a missed opportunity there. I did like the end where she said, this is my birthright. This is mine. Mine is fighting, and I'm going to fight against you for making me feel like poop, for making me feel worthless. So I thought, from my perspective, this was a really intense scene that had some missed opportunities, but it was also really good about fighting back against it.
I think Maggie brings up a really good point about that. I think that it's good and bad that Waverly says that. I think, though, at least certainly for me, I focus a lot on others. So working on putting myself first has always been very hard. So I very much empathize with that line. And I really like this clip because it really shows how ongoing mental health is. And I think it highlights that you really need people to have your back. I internalize a lot of my emotions, and I am slowly trying to build up my, community to help me. So, yeah.
For me, that little interaction between Jolene and Waverly at the beginning of that clip is one of the harder things I've ever watched, because my turn. Having the demon that's kind of representing the mental illness here say you're worthless, they don't love you. That is a physical depiction of a voice that is in my head a lot. I don't know how many y'all relate to that, but I know a lot of us probably have pretty intense negative self-talk. And when you let that voice get so loud, it can take a huge toll on you. When you're letting that be the voice that you hear most, that You're worthless. You're a burden. Everybody would be better off if you weren't here. So I like that they showed that, but in a way that like, because it made me feel like I'm not the only one. This is a thing, like a lot of people are going through this, and this is a voice that a lot of people hear, and I really related to that. And then obviously, I think that we can all agree one of the most powerful lines in any show we've ever seen is "I'm here and I stay and I love them back." And I know at least Jules and I are wearing our bracelets because kind of at the end of the day, that's always my message to anybody I talk to who's struggling with mental health. It's hard, and it's hard a lot, but it's so important that if all you can do, if you're having a bad day, if all you can do is just stay, then do that. Just stay. Because no matter what Jolene is telling you, there are people. Jolene's a liar. Depression's a liar. There are people who you matter to. You matter to me. I tell everybody that I talk to online that you matter to me. So it was a very triumphant moment when she said, I'm here and I stay. That was kind of me being like, she says that, and I use that a lot with myself too. No matter how bad things are, how bad things are being, I know that there are people that I'm here for and that I deserve to keep going. Kind of what Maggie was saying, that part they left out. We should keep that in mind too. I deserve to keep going. I'm here and I stay. And then eventually, we really did fight back and said, this is for making me feel worthless. And we should all feel that way. We should be angry at that voice. You have no right to tell me that I don't belong here.
Agreed.
So that scene I loved so much, for all the things that everyone has kind of discussed so far, but mostly I'm here and I stay. That one line. We've got bracelets. I didn't used to wear dog tags. I didn't used to wear jewelry ever, but I wear this because I had a really rough time in December, and a random Earper messaged me and offered to mail this, and I've been wearing it since. And one of the things that many of us don't realize is mental health is a neurological, biological thing. When we are in a heightened emotional state, being all, academic here, our prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of all our logical and rational thinking, that goes out the door, right? Things that usually make sense to us, things that usually are rational and logical, like Waverly being able to know that Waverly or Winona loves her, right? That Nicole loves her, even though things aren't the greatest. It took her a little while to get there because in that emotional state, it just felt overwhelming, right? And for a lot of us to be able to have a mantra that we can go back to, I'm here and I stay, it's so powerful because that's a line that we're able to always fall back on. That's a line that we can hold on to, right? Even when these critical negative thoughts are coming through, reminding ourselves, I'm here and I'm stay, right? And there are people out there who love me.
And it's our line, right? The fandom's line. It's ours.
Yeah.
And that's why you had a random Earper who did that to you. And I mean, that's what we do for each other, right? There are studies out there that show compassion actually helps with depression and anxiety symptoms. And what it shows is actually compassion for others, but also compassion for yourself. So that's why it's so important that compassionate Earper who gave you a moment, who allowed you to reflect on yourself and had a moment of self-compassion. I mean, kind of meta, but very important. These are the things that help us grow and help us become more comfortable with who we are and sort of get out of that Jolene moment, right? And stay with each other. All right, clip number 3.
I really, really like this clip. It's probably the first clip that that just really, really spoke to me. Depression is so ongoing, and any mental illness is ongoing, and it's really, really affirming to have Waverly. Did Waverly say that?
Oh, it was Mama Earp.
Mama Earp, sorry.
Close enough, they're related.
Mama Earp say, I am just so tired because I feel that every single day. I feel like it absolutely normalizes being able to say that, and I'm totally losing my train of thought. So
It's okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add anything in before we take some questions?
No, I mean, she pretty much covered it. Just maybe to finish the thought. It beats you down. And we've all had days when we're just like, I'm so tired. Like, again, I fight every day. I have to fight this every day. And it is exhausting. It's okay to feel tired about it. It's okay to be off one day, to have a bad day, because it is exhausting. It takes so much out of us to keep fighting it. But at the end of the day, that's what we do. That's what we do for ourselves, for each other.
So I think we're going to just stop with the clips there. Does anyone have any questions for us? All right, if anyone can grab a mic. And while they grab the mic, I'm going to ask a question. There's one actually that's been asked multiple times. And that question is kind of, how do we compensate for a bad day or with anxiety for fear for losing a family member? Kind of what do we do to sort of help ourselves sort of stave off Jolene, and kind of, because remember, Jolene is a part of us. That was a part of the TV show that I hated, because I don't want my anxiety to be portrayed as a demon. I'm very happy they did that as a demon because it's genre. But at the same time, it's a part of me. So I want to kind of normalize this in myself. And so how do we deal with that on a day-to-day basis? So maybe we'll go backwards and start from Bonnie, and then we can talk, and then very briefly, of course, so we can get some other questions. Go ahead.
Can you just ask that question one more time?
Yo, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Okay. So I work as a clinical counselor. This is something that I constantly find myself going back to, not just for myself, but also for the students that I work with, right? Because it does get tiring, and bad days quite often feel like we have more than less, if that grammatically makes sense. When it comes down to it, I find that checking in with ourselves and asking ourselves what is it that we need is important, right? Because if we're tired, there's a reason we're tired, right? We've been fighting for a long time. We've had too much on our plate. We perhaps don't have the support that we should have, right? Being able to know that, okay, maybe I forgot my medication, or maybe I haven't slept at all. I've slept 1 hour, right? Maybe I had a really bad fight with somebody who I love and care about the most, and usually they're the person I go to talk about things, right? A lot of times we forget that when we're in that deep, dark place, there are all these other factors that are taking place, right? One of the things that I found to be helpful is reflective journaling, and journaling in a way that is non-judgmental, just statements of what's happening, right? Another one that I would encourage all of you to participate in is something called a gratitude jar or a gratitude box. And what you do is you ask people you love and care about to write things that they appreciate or care about you. Or if you want, you can write it for someone you love and care about as well, right? Things like, I love that you make breakfast for me, even though sometimes you burn the eggs or something, right? Or I love that you give such warm hugs, right? Things that perhaps we don't realize that others feel towards us, right? I love that Jen has her snack wagon and has that around and
I also
takes
love
care
Jen's
of
snack wagon.
right?
Maybe a little too much, but that's okay.
Right? And so little things like that, even while we're here, even taking advantage of that, right? Because there will be bad days, and bad days where we feel like we have no fuel at all, right? We're out of spoons, we're out of Post-it notes, and we're able to reach into that jar and just get a little bit of energy and be like, I remember when this happened. And if it's not things I appreciate, you can write down happier memories, right? Remember that time they had that newlyweds game and they asked what Nicole's favorite thing to eat was? Right? Little moments like that when you're like, oh my gosh, that was so funny, right? Because when we're in that dark place, it's hard for us to remember these things. And for us to be able to pick something up, that's great, right? Videos, photos, pics that you have in your phone, favorite them.
Hey, Bonbon, can I comment on one thing? The one thing I will add is actually cognitive reframing. So I don't know if you heard what Bonnie said. She said, you will have bad days. I prefer never to say that to myself. I say, you'll have not so good days. And I know it sounds kind of hokey and goofy, but it actually, no offense, Bonbon. But there's actually data that shows that cognitive reframing actually does help. So if you actually restructure things instead of using the negative term, and actually restructure it in a slightly more positive term while saying it the same way, it actually can affect the way you sort of perceive things. So I think that's very important. Yeah, that's the only thing I would add. Anyone else want to add in? Otherwise, we'll get a question from the audience.
Yeah.
I'm loud. I don't need a mic.
All right, go for it. Hit it.
Sorry, the mic is for, actually, we can repeat it just so the YouTube stream catches it. So go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
It isn't just about the 4 pounds.
And you guys, I'm going to say this, if this is okay, Bonnie. We can stay after and talk.
Yeah.
And just keep asking questions if you guys have them. But if you guys need to leave, feel free to leave. We do have the panel room open afterwards. So go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. I actually also submitted this one online, so I don't know if this applies or not, but since joining Earp Twitter, I've utilized and appreciated Earper support, but I've also been concerned, and I think this is mostly, unfortunately, a question for Bonnie. There have been people asked that, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of out of our pay grade, like these people that are announcing that they're suicidal, and not in a way that they're saying, it's one thing when you say, oh, Jolene's kicking my butt today, and I just need, some support and some love. Great. But I'm personally very concerned at how many people I've seen basically say goodbye to people. Say goodbye, everyone, goodbye, staff, and then, goodbye to the cast and whatever, like they may or may not, be suicidal. And I never know how the proper way or the best way to respond to something like that when you can't find their, real in life people, or, the question I'm asking, and how do we deal with this?
Yeah.
We had this discussion at one of
we
our
talked about
chats, actually. So go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, we talked about this for a really long time. It's complex, right? And so many ethical concerns coming into play as well, right? Twitter being a public space, and then boundaries and what is okay and what is not okay, right? I will check through the Earper support hashtag myself every once in a while just to see how people are doing. And a lot of times it's, letting them know, we love you, you're cared for. But a lot of times it's important to reiterate the fact that it's not just this community and our friendship that we have online. We also need support in real life as well, right? And for some of us, we're really fortunate. We have Earpers that are within, some of us walking or driving distance, others much, much further away, right? And so knowing that it's important to make connections with people that we can physically reach quickly as well, right? And if not, seeking out mental professional support, whether that be with a doctor or a counselor or with a psychiatrist, psychologist, the list goes on, right? Being able to have that support, because a lot of this we don't have the language for, and we don't understand it very well, right? Or if we do, we understand it really well, we feel like the other person doesn't get it, which makes it even harder for us to be able to get that support. Right. I've often said it online. If you're seeking a counselor, find someone who's a good fit. Right. I am not going to go find someone who is like a Christian counselor who specializes in conversion therapy. That's just not a good fit for me. Right. It's right. Or I'm not going to go and see a doctor who spends 30 seconds and walks out the door. Right. I want to make sure it's somebody who understands what's going on and somebody who's willing to listen, and making sure that we have that support. It's important.
Any other questions? We have someone in the middle here. Go ahead and you can, if you want to start asking your question, I can try to repeat it.
Do you think that is, things in entertainment that overdo it as far as representation?
What do you mean by overdo it? You mean too much representation or make it just a little exaggerated?
Like over-exaggerated.
Yeah.
I think all of us would say that yes, most of entertainment media over exaggerates this. I actually think I actually submitted this episode to one of my psychiatry colleagues because I think this is an excellent teaching episode, because it's one of the few times where you actually see that filter truly like pushed externally, and is a good depiction of kind of depression, anxiety, and most importantly, actually of gaslighting. So this is really good gaslighting episode. But I think most of the time, I mean, I'll think all of us would say, hell yeah, way over exaggerated. And it shows people in non-functional situations, which is super not helpful, but it's a step we need to kind of take. I think there was one over here too.
This person's had
That
their
one
hand.
first? All right. And then there's one over here too. And please keep asking questions. I have so much stuff.
Actually, this is specific for Heather, if I could. Being a vet, and I'm a vet also, in the Army. And I was just curious as to what made you decide to go into the Marines, that you thought maybe it would help you with that. I know I didn't really realize what was going on with me at the time, and I drank a lot. I became an alcoholic, which caused me a lot of problems.
When I went in, when I was a teenager still, I grew up very religious. And so it was kind of a thing where it was stigmatized from a religion aspect. And then going to the military, it was stigmatized from it's a weakness perspective. So at the time, I didn't know I had mental illness. I thought I was just weak. I thought that everybody felt really sad and terrible and hated themselves and was worried all the time, and that I was just weak and not dealing with it well. And that's how I felt in the military as well too. It wasn't until I had been in for a few years and started kind of making friends and people that were like, listen, like, I think you have anxiety, I think you have depression, I think you need to see somebody, and finally having friends that pushed me into doing it. So after that, I was empowered, and I started trying to counteract the culture in the military. But no, it was definitely very difficult actually going into the military, dealing with mental health issues, and it was a long time before I got them dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question over here.
I was going to say it's really brave, first and foremost, for you to talk about mental health. Let's just say I struggled a little bit, even though it's like not external. But my question is, where would you want to see media develop in terms of progressing and addressing mental health? And is there a specific way that you have an open question for you guys to address it, and how you want it to be addressed?
I guess I can take this one. Honestly, I want people to stop talking about it, right? I just want to have a character on media that has mental health issues, right? And that's not just like, it's just like Way Hot, right? You know, so what? They're two women, big deal. They have a great relationship. We don't really talk about it on television. Why? Because we shouldn't have to. Sorry, I got a little aggressive there. Because these are all things that are part of us, right? I defer to the rest of the panel about, you know, how to have it represented. But I think from my perspective, the ideal thing would be that it is a person with mental illness, not we talk about a mental illness who happens to be a person in a show, right? Because that's what it feels like right now. So that's kind of me, but I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. So much that we see, it's focused on the mental illness rather than the person just with that mental illness. I think that sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
It's all good. It's been a long day. Anyone else want to add to that question? Otherwise, we have another question over there, I think.
I just had a quick question. Do y'all think there's value in continuing Waverly's journey with the feelings that Jolene brought up as the season 4, season 5 continue?
Absolutely. I think that it would, because Jolene didn't die in season 3. I think that
She sort of died. She got wrapped in some
She's gone.
Well, here's my perspective on that one, if I may kind of diverge. It's actually a great representation because she's never really gone, right? Mm-hmm. She's there, but she's sort of controlled, right, in the back of our mind because we all have her. It's just about how we deal with it. But anyway, go ahead, Bonbon.
No, like I suspect that the writers might bring them back, might bring Jolene back next season, and I think it would be a great opportunity to continue that journey, because it like her storyline has been written so well, to continue with that representation and to normalize that this is just something that we all experience, right?
I don't necessarily think or expect that we'll see, Zoe Palmer's character back, but I do think it would be really great to revisit those feelings in Waverly in terms of just following up on the fact that those do exist with her and that is something that she deals with and that there's fallout from that. But I mean, there's a lot there too. Like we're talking about Jolene, but that's not the only representation of mental health issues on Wine and Earp. I mean, we've seen all kinds of stuff in terms of the feelings that Doc and Winona dealt with after giving up their child. I think Emily's all but confirmed that Winona does have PTSD. And so these other mental health issues exist there. They're just not at the forefront of it and not talked about, but it definitely informs their characters and how they deal with different situations.
I definitely agree with Heather. I think that would be really great to revisit more of Waverly's mind. I think that would be really wonderful because of the clip that we saw, her saying that she loves them back and she would never give up on them. I think it would be really important to see her recognize loving herself.
Awesome. There's a question up in the front here. White shirt. Whitish shirt.
It's got flowers on it. I just had one question for everybody, and I was just wondering when you guys, or if you guys ever have, any like anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that, what kind of things do you guys do to help calm yourself down?
Meds. Okay. Great calming techniques is great, but I mean, a reality of mental health issues too is just like I take pain pills for my spine, I take anxiety meds for my anxiety. If I'm having a really high anxiety day, I will take. That's another thing that's stigmatized too. Even within the mental health community, meds are stigmatized. I absolutely need my meds to help regulate my anxiety and to keep me from going too far over. So, a lot of times, like I need to find some requirements like that. But absolutely, if meds are something that help you and are prescribed by your doctor, like that's how I deal with having anxiety attacks.
I have performance anxiety, and it's really hard for me to get up here. I don't take meds. What I do is I actually took cognitive behavioral therapy to sort of help with cognitive restructuring. And I also do calming breathing. So I do a 5-minute moment where it's kind of like meditation, but not, where I breathe in, hold, breathe for 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, exhale 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds. And I do that for about 5 minutes. Because my heart rate can get up to about 170 before I get on stage, which is not good. Trust me, I'm a doctor. So I do that. I also try to stay in the moment. So that's something that I do too in terms of dealing with anxiety. I try not to focus on the things like when coming up on stage. Like if you think about anxiety, what does that mean? It means you start worrying about what's going to happen. So for those of us with performance anxiety, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get up on stage. I'm going to say anything. All these people are going to be out there. They're going to stare at me. I'm going to look like an idiot. Those are the things that kind of go through my head. So it's about kind of restructuring that and saying, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to connect with you as best as I can. I'm going to be as articulate as I can in the moment, knowing that I'm going to be anxious. That, you know, you guys will receive what I give. And hopefully the intention will be the perception. Maybe it won't, but I've done my best. And I think that's really what I focus on. I've seen people in terms of performance anxiety take because the medication's a little different. You take it acutely beforehand. And I've seen people do that, and when they talk, it's just not the same. So that's why I've chosen not to. But I do think taking medication in terms, you know, different situations rely on different things. But for me, with the performance anxiety, that's kind of how I deal with it. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
For me, medication has not worked. I do a lot of positive affirmation. So if I'm feeling angry, I tell myself, like, this is okay, and I will get through it. I also, if like I'm not working or anything, I try to journal or listen to music. Listening to music is really calming for me. And I also recently took up Krav Maga, which is really has helped my PTSD. And being able to like practice those techniques and just imagining punching something, not actually punching something, is really wonderful. And also learning how to do groin strikes and taking off chokeholds, that's very empowering. So I do that if I'm able to.
Yeah, so
There's somebody else at the end, but just
I know, right?
like that.
So misleading. I literally have a list of things that I go through. Like I create something that I call a self-care kit or self-care box or self-care list. And I encourage my students to do this as well.
Does it include chocolate?
It does
Thought
include
so.
chocolate. It includes chocolate. It includes a warm blanket. If it's a hot bath, if it's in the winter, I go snowboarding. I talk to my friends. I listen to music that I love listening to, music that I know like gets me upbeat. I will a lot of times really try my hardest to focus on being in the present moment, because a lot of times what ends up happening is our thoughts begin to cycle, right? And as they cycle, it impacts other parts of ourselves, right? Our thoughts impact our emotions then impact us physically because our body starts to react and we start noticing, oh man, my heart rate's racing, right? Oh, I'm so tense, right? That then adds to the thoughts and it really quickly cycles. So being able to catch myself at either of those points, doing cognitive behavioral therapy techniques or doing calming techniques, something similar to what I walked all of you through. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a therapist. I love being able to do those in session with my students. And there are days where I'll be like, I got to do 2. I really needed those 2, right? Because everyone has those waves of ups and downs, right? Being able to check in with ourselves and know that when it's time to say, okay, I need to call in and take a mental health day, or like, okay, I need to sit down. I can't keep pushing myself, right? It's important to be able to do that. Yeah.
I think that's actually all the time we have. I'm really sorry. But I wanted to thank everyone for coming. We really appreciate you guys coming out, and I really appreciate everyone's vulnerability on the panel. I think it's really important to share and to destigmatize, and you know, we're always available for questions after also. So thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Have a good day. Keep burping.